Believe it or not, some people are permanently barred from coming into the United States. It's a permanent inadmissibility bar where they cannot ever get a green card. Now, what a lot of people don't know is there is a non-immigrant visa waiver, which is an alternative to get people in the U.S. I've used it before time and time again. It's non-immigrant visas. We're going to talk all about it, let you know how that's done. All right, let's get at it. Hey, YouTube family and GN subs. Humberto Gray from Los Angeles, California. I'm over here in Brentwood near Beverly Hills, my practice for 35 years now. What I do is three things for those of you who are new to the channel. Number one, I give you good news, right? Everybody knows me as the good news guy. Kind of cool. Number two, talk about complicated subject matter cases. I break them down, make them very simple to understand. That's what I do. And then number three, I talk about real cases in my office. All right, so what are we talking about here? We are talking about a non-immigrant visa waiver, okay? It's when you're applying for a non-immigrant visa. Usually my clients, it's an E2 visa. I apply for the E2 visa. There's a ground of inadmissibility. I apply for the 212D3 waiver. It waives the ground of inadmissibility and your client can maintain and come to the U.S. You know, I have two cases that I'll talk about today, and I'll give you a good example, but the law is found at 9 Foreign Affairs Manual 305.4. That's your law. And then there's a case. The case is called Matter of Franca. Okay. This is a very, very interesting case. It gives you the standard by which the waivers are going to be adjudicated by the U.S. consulate. And what they do is they look at three different things, right? Risk of harm to society. If you're to come to the U.S., that's number one. Number two, seriousness of the immigration violation. And then number three, reason for coming to the U.S. What do you want to do in the U.S., right? So that's basically the framework of the law. And so what I do, as I always do, I have two cases that I'm currently working on. We're going to be successful. And we'll give you those as example, and then we'll apply the law, okay? So first case, I got a client who was convicted of a crime related to controlled substances. That is a no-no in the U.S., okay? He has a wife in the U.S. who is a U.S. citizen. He has two children who are going off to college. They are also U.S. citizens, and he cannot apply for the green card because of this permanent bar. Devastating, right? So he comes to me and says, hey, Humberto, any options available? I said, absolutely. Let's talk about you investing in the U.S. for an E2 visa, and then we apply for the 212D3 waiver to waive that ground of inadmissibility. So that's what we're going to do. So let's go through the RANCA test, right? Number one, what are they going to look at, right? Harm to society for him being reunited with his family. Looks like it's not so bad, right? I mean, you know, he was using drugs personally, not selling drugs, not trafficking drugs, etc. So not so much in terms of harm to society, but this is how you have to argue these cases, you know, at the U.S. consulate when we're applying for this waiver, and we're going to provide substantial evidence to prove same, right? Let's talk about the seriousness of the violation. Immigration treats any type of drug conviction very seriously. They do. So it is serious. You know, in the application, you might admit, look, serious, it was a small amount, etc. But there's worse crimes, correct? If you want to, you know, kind of compare. In any event, that's the seriousness of the crime. And then reason for coming to the U.S. This is his strong component. He is going to invest a large amount of money in a business startup in the U.S. so we can get the E2 investor visa. He's going to hire tons of U.S. workers, right? I mean, we're talking about a $3 to $5 million investment. We're talking about 100 to 150 employees, etc. That is very strong. So we want to make that look very, very good in terms of what we look at and all these three factors in his case and whether or not the case will be approved. Second case, a little different, you know, and this is out of Canada. So the procedure out of Canada is a little bit different, right? So Canadian client is on a TN, temporary non-immigrant visa, was convicted of transporting marijuana to a friend in the dorms, okay? no. Now, she got a deferred judgment, which isn't really like a conviction for immigration purposes. It is. She did no time. Ultimately, the case was dismissed. All right, but it is a problem. Again, if the consul has reason to believe under 212A2 that you're a user of drugs, it's a ground of inadmissibility. Okay, so she already had her TN visa, as I said, and now she needs a waiver. What's the process for her waiver, right? So let's talk about it, right? Seriousness of the immigration violation. Yes, again, relating to drugs, absolutely. Risk of harm to society. Trafficking drugs is a little different than personal use, right? So I would say on that prong, we got a big hill to climb, right? Reason for coming to the U.S. to work, right? She's employed, in a TN occupation. This case, not as strong, folks, as you can see when you go through the three factors, not as strong. All right, let's talk about how we apply for this visa. It's a pretty simple procedure. When you're applying for your non-immigrant visa, you go online, you did the DS-160. At the time of the interview, you submit a letter with your evidence, okay? There's no particular form with the 212D3 application. Pretty simple. Your letter, cover letter with your evidence attached to it. Pretty simple stuff, right? Canada, a little different because Canadians don't need visas. So a lot of times you get the approval, of the non-immigrant visa, for example, the TN visa that we just talked about. So how do you get the waiver in this particular instance? Well, what you do is you apply at the ARO. It's the Admissibility Review Office. They take your biometrics from the RCMP. That's the Canadian police counterpart, and then they adjudicate your waiver based on an application called an I-192 and your letter with the evidence. That's how you apply for the 212D3 waiver at the port of entry Canadian border, okay? A K visa, fiancé visa, right? It's a non-immigrant visa. There's an exception, right? The 212D3 waiver only applies to the K1 visa in the event that you're otherwise eligible for a different type of waiver, like a 212H waiver. Okay, a little tricky on that one. So automatically, you can't use the 212D3 for that particular non-immigrant visa unless the applicant otherwise qualifies, okay? That's an exception. A lot of people don't know this as well. The 212D3 waiver can be issued by an immigration judge in removal proceedings. An immigration judge has authority. There's a small case that indicates that the judge has jurisdiction. So if that is an option for you in removal proceedings where you can have the judge grant your 212D3 waiver, fantastic. So what I've done in the past, like I have a case, E2 client who's had the 212D3 for the last 5 years under his E2 visa. It's already been, stamped by the U.S. consulate out of Canada, and he's here in the U.S. It ran out mid last year, June of 2020. The consulate in Canada is closed, so I can't send him up there to get the E2 extended and get the waiver issued. You can't get the waiver issued here in the U.S. because there's no office. The USCIS doesn't have jurisdiction to issue the waivers. So what I did was I just extended his E2 visa here in the U.S. There's no request for admission, so there's no need for a waiver. That's what I argued to immigration. It's a nuanced case. It's never happened because we've never had COVID where the consulate is shut down and you have Canadians on E2 visas with this 212D3 waiver that was expiring. So interesting case, made some good arguments, got it all done. Hey, YouTube family, thanks so much for watching. Getting close to 4 million views, 50,000 subs. You got to give me a thumbs up. You got to help me get there, folks. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.